All right, everybody, welcome back to Culz Reviews Deep Dives. It's our final movie for a Halloween season 2024. Maybe next year we'll do four. We'll start this a little bit earlier and get four in here. For our last one, we are doing Brendan's favorite Halloween movie, Trick or Treat, 2007. And we'll get to it. We thought it'd be a perfect one for this day in particular because this is when people are trick-or-treating. So the title fits with the time. As per usual, for these ones this year, we got Grayson, David, and Sam. Now we'll go around. David, was this your first time watching Trick or Treat?
Yes, it actually was. I had not seen it before this.
Grayson, what about you?
Believe it or not, this was not my first time seeing this movie. Had it recommended to me really heavily back a few years ago, and had nothing better to do. Like one autumn afternoon, and I was like, "Hey, 'tis the season," and yeah, this is like my third or fourth time watching this movie.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's my first time watching it. I actually finished it, I don't know, 5 minutes before we started filming, so it's pretty recent in my mind. Sam, what about you?
It was my first time watching this movie as well.
So, I don't know, David. Well, actually, give it to Grayson. Grayson, as someone that's watched it multiple times, what are your thoughts on this one?
Honestly, really good movie. I think it captures the spirit of the holiday pretty much pitch perfect. Obviously, it is a horror movie that is, I would say, definitely more of a cohesive anthology than just an anthology. It's multifaceted stories. I think it definitely touches on the pillars of Halloween, including like scary stories, vampires, monsters, werewolves, zombies, traditions, why people do what they do, like a lot of stuff with what a lot of people were raised with for, going out trick-or-treating, or the reason they decorate, or like the tradition of Halloween itself is deeply entrenched in this movie, and the spirit of Halloween is a huge inspiration from what I've heard and what I've done the research on, to like a lot of the filmmakers and a lot of just the people that were wanting to be involved. Really loved the idea of just like the spirit of this film in general.
Yeah, while watching it, I was like, we almost picked a perfect beginning and end to the three movies we ended up doing this year. Because this is almost like a more adult version of Halloween Town where everything is real in this one as well. And we have kind of where they got the traditions, like you were saying. So I thought that was kind of interesting. For me, I didn't know it was an anthology film, uh, or pseudo anthology, as far as like telling bits and pieces here and there. Not quite like Memento, but kind of sort of where it's not in a linear time frame, but kind of you learn certain people and their backstories, and then here's their current story. So it was interesting, and like Grayson said, it's Halloween. We'll kind of get to Ohio because it brings up Ohio. So real quick, Grayson, is Ohio like this for Halloween? Like, do they do these big old like celebrations in the middle of the streets like this?
I've never been to Ohio during Halloween, but I'm gonna say maybe. I don't know. But yeah, I have no idea.
Okay. I was just saying, David, what were your thoughts with this one?
Yeah, I like it. Was a very well done anthology. I do like the interlinking pieces of everything. You're getting like, oh, this guy was in that story two stories ago, or oh, that's what happened to him after this. Like, I did like the way they weaved that together. And even though I think it was a little brutal about the not going with traditions, I think that's some pretty severe punishments for something as simple as like, oh, you blew out your pumpkin too soon. But yeah, no, I liked that there's like this force in Sam that is, keeping the traditions alive, making sure that the spirit of Halloween is honored and respected the way he thinks it should be. So, yeah, I liked it. It was definitely interesting. A good way of kind of mixing historical, traditional stuff in with some more modern day horror.
Sam, what about you?
Um, yeah, I would definitely agree. It threw me off a little bit with how I was jumping around, but it all made sense in the end, essentially. But there was one that I was just like, oh, this is that next victim, and it turned out differently, and I was just like, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
Won't go into too much detail yet, but
Yeah, not yet, but we'll get there. I will say I had seen at least one of these, kind of like a scene on YouTube, and so when it got to that, I was like, oh, okay, I do remember that portion. But I will say, starting off, horror people in horror movies are just the dumbest characters. Why that lady was like in the middle of the night, I'm gonna take down my decorations instead of go to bed. I was like, what is your issue? Like, come on, it's like dark out. No one's gonna really be doing that. Like, it's always horror movie people that are like, just make dumb decisions. I don't know.
her mom was going to be there in the morning, and she hates Halloween.
Yeah, but still, just wake up, do it the next day. You're doing it in the dark. That dude stared at you for some reason. He wasn't even the bad guy, you know? He just staring.
He was just going to some sort of party and just standing there ominously.
Yeah, it's just creeping with blood on. Well, I think, was that a mask we see later on in the water?
Possibly.
Okay, I wondered because I was like, huh. Especially now
Wasn't it? That'd be interesting. I didn't. Greyson would have to tell us that. Would that be the one dude of like the group of kids?
Wait,
No,
say
it's
that one more time.
it's not that kid, but they were panning through different masks floating on the water, and there was one that looked like his mask, like even had the blood splatter on the one
No,
side.
because the masks that were in the water were from the kids. The masks that they were wearing.
I think there could have been more.
I
We'll
mean,
find
maybe.
out. I don't know. I've only watched the once. I don't know why. Grayson, as far as like going into like the history of making this movie and like what you were saying with the filmmakers, do you want to discuss that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's a large part of what got me into watching this movie the first time. So it's been a while since I've touched up on this, but the director was working on this project for a very long time, and then like he pitched the movie idea to, I believe it was, I can't remember who, but I know Bryan Singer was a producer that picked up on the script and then started pushing it all the way through. That's how he got what's her name that played Rogue in the original X-Men movies or Anna Paquin to be in the movies, was because Bryan Singer was a producer on it. But it was just basically the director wanted to make essentially there were movies for like Christmas, and the rules of being like following the traditions of that. He wanted to create this, this world of paying tribute to not only the classics of Halloween, but still like preserving the spirit and the tradition of what Halloween came from. That's kind of what led to the the way the movie ends. So when he ended the movie, he started like they obviously licensed out the property, and they started doing like comic books with it. And Michael Dougherty, who directed the movie and wrote the movie, was like involved in creating some of the stories and the backlines for Trick or Treat. And I mean, I never saw the movie as a kid growing up, but I always saw Sam on like those the ads for a bunch of Halloween comic books growing up, and that always kind of like stuck with me up until I saw the movie. But Michael Dougherty created all of this, and then sort of like they started releasing comic books with some of the other stories that he and other writers made up after the fact to kind of keep the idea and the traditions of Halloween like known to the public, and kind of like in a weird way be gothically and horrifically educational.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting just way of making movies. We don't see it a whole lot. A lot of times it is just linear storytelling. Every once in a while you get like a memento or something where, time is not what it seems and it's played in a certain way. And so I think as far as the filmmaking aspect, it's a very unique way. And I'm always for like new or just like bringing out old ways to make movies again. So this was fun. David, was there a scene in here that stood out to you the most?
I mean, honestly, I just think Sam is a really cool looking character. I loved him being sprinkled in throughout it. And again, there's that kind of mystique of like, where exactly he came from, what is he kind of, which I really liked. So anytime he's on screen, I think he is a good Halloween icon up there with, like Freddy, Jason, and all that. I think he just has a very iconic look. So anytime they could get him involved was a win for me.
Oh. Yeah, and talking about iconic, like Grayson kind of said too, we see him more and more on different like Halloween ads or costume ads, Halloween like decoration stuff or animatronics you can put in your yard. You can see this character popping up. So as far as making something that's last, it's new. It's definitely the newest movie we've picked for our look at Halloween season this year, but it has a pretty long legacy already. In some aspects, perhaps it's more in the just public zeitgeist today than any of the other two, especially around Halloween. Sam, did you see any of the characters around before watching this movie?
Any of the characters?
Well, just mainly the main.
I mean, yeah, I have, but like made no correlation until like 2 days ago when I watched it. I still was just like, why'd they choose that? And then I was just like, oh, that's why. It like finally clicked in.
Yeah. No, it's an interesting thing, and it definitely plays on different tropes of kind of the horror genre as well, and a little bit of kind of like cabin in the woods type of vibe, as far as like you take different tropes and then make it your own. Not as funny. That one played for more of the comedic. This one was more for like the blood and gore aspect, but it was fun just to see certain things that are, I guess, tied to different franchises be incorporated here. And then sometimes you think things are real and they weren't, and then other things were real, which was kind of interesting. So, Grayson, out of any of these kind of short stories, what one did you enjoy the best?
Honestly, my favorite one probably has to be either the principal one at the beginning where he kills the kid with the injected candy. Just because growing up, everybody knew that kid that was just kind of, a little bit of a little turd, a little douche nozzle that was just a jerk on Halloween. That always would be, somebody that you would want to see them get their comeuppance, but they never really did. This essentially was like a way to like live through somebody else taking it out, even though the kid didn't really deserve to die, but you wanted to see something happen. So it was a little bit of spiritual retribution, if you will. But honestly, I think my favorite one out of the entire one, just like concept-wise and aesthetically, is probably like the werewolf feast in the middle. I think that one's pretty sick.
Yeah. Well, and kind of going back to the candy, that's kind of like one of the big urban legends of Halloween is people are injecting candy with poison or drugs and stuff. And I think the only time that has actually been recorded was this parents poison their own kids' candy. And then they found out it's actually not a thing. People aren't just poisoning candy left and right. So that was, a little urban legend rolling into it. The werewolf stuff was interesting. It was definitely a different take on morphing, which was interesting to see, and we'll kind of get to that. Not your normal. David, any of the anthology stories that you enjoyed the most?
I honestly would probably go with the same too. The candy one, just because it is such an urban thing of the kids like, watch out, what's in your candy? It's razor blades, poison, whatever, which has no real basis. But the werewolf one I really liked because that came out of nowhere. Up until then, it had been pretty regular, like getting killed. It was not like hardcore supernatural. Yeah. But then they suddenly were like, yep, now we got werewolves. Because up till then, Sam was the only thing that was even kind of like not normal. And now we had this, and that just blew the lid off for everything.
Sam, what about you? Any anthology portions that you enjoyed the most?
Definitely the werewolf scene, because that was very unexpected. And then probably if I would, probably the other one with the old man after the werewolf scene, because that one was kind of unexpected, or at least you think it made it seem like he got out of it and then didn't.
Well, he got out.
No, he didn't.
He survived, and he's the bus driver. So
Yeah, you found out that's where the bus driver that had survived the drowning or whatever.
Well, yes, but then the kids show up and kill him in a comic scene. If you guys don't remember that.
Oh no, I don't remember that.
Okay. But no, he doesn't make it out of it. Like
I think you made that up.
Me made it up. Okay, sure.
Yep, just now. You just made it up.
Grayson's gonna fact check. No, are you talking?
Oh, I mean, I'll speak up for Sam on this one. He would definitely, the kids come in and it's definitely like nothing's confirmed on screen. It's like comic panels, but pretty sure Brian Cox is dead.
I'm pretty sure just the way that these stories went, he's dead.
Yeah.
Like they wouldn't let him get away.
The peculiar thing is that girl witch that the kids mess with. Does she actually come out of his house, or is she coming out of another house with a bunch of pumpkins in front of it?
It's supposed to be a different house entirely. Like she made all those pumpkins herself because, you know, this was definitely made in the early 2000s that they didn't know what to do with people that were heavily autistic because that girl was autistic as fuck.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, she, that was not Brian Cox's house. That was her own house where she made all those pumpkins.
Okay. Because I was like, wait. Yeah, that's the part that got me really confused. Because I was just like, wait, did she come out of his house? Like,
I thought the same thing too. I was like, so the whole time I was expecting her to show up and kill him. Because I'll say, I mean, the werewolf scene, we've all talked about it, so we'll just throw that one out anyway. We'll get back to it. We'll do more of a deep dive portion on that in a minute. But I also enjoyed like the mine thing because that just seems like such a just country like horror, just like kind of urban legend thing, and it kind of plays on like I don't know, the bus for me. I always think of like Nightmare on Elm Street for some reason. Just because there is that little scene there. So that was interesting, and it does kind of play on the trope where they obviously brought her there to just scare her, but then she ended up like letting them die for real, which was kind of interesting. And then of course the whole scene or the anthology portion in the house where he goes to kill him, Brian Cox's character, but he gets a candy. He's like, okay, I'm fine, and walks out. And that's the scene I had seen on YouTube. And so when that came up, I was like, oh yeah, I remember. Like he goes and he had the candy. He's like, oh yeah, I like this. Trick or treat.
Well, actually, I think bringing that up, I'm going to change my favorite scene. I'm going to take away the principal one, but I think that's probably my favorite one of the entire series is the one inside Brian Cox's house too.
Yeah. Well, and all the scenes, even though they're different in what they're doing or tone, perhaps, they all connect. And I think that's what's good. Like they all feel like they're the same movie and stuff, but you can tell each story, and it's fun. They're trying to be a little bit different, a little bit something unique about them. And so you can remember each one, but it doesn't, I don't know. I thought it was enjoyable. I'm glad Brendan said it, but then he didn't. Thank you, Brendan, even though you're not here.
Yeah, what the hell, Brandon?
No, he's doing a show this weekend, so he was unable to make it. Let's go into the werewolf scene because I think everyone's mentioned it. Grayson, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts when you first saw the werewolf scene?
It was definitely not where I was expecting the scene to go. The way they were building it up, that's honestly probably why it's my favorite scene, is the way they built it up through like the dialogue and the actual entirety of the movie. Is it made it seem like they were just going out to do, you know, Halloween stuff, go out, have fun, have a good time, and then, you know, dealing with the early 2000s trope of the virgin story. But then when it turns out that they're all, you know, werewolves, pretty sick turn. And then especially with like the transformations, because we've seen stuff like, you know, American Werewolf in London, and like all the transformations have been done in really new and ingenuitive ways. But seeing them like cut open their skin in order to pop the skin off to turn into werewolves was pretty gruesome and intense, and also pretty sick.
Sam, what was it about the werewolf scene for you that you enjoyed?
Because I was thinking that they were just vampires at first, just because it showed two fangs at least, and some of them. And other than that, it was just that fucking the Red Riding Hood quote that he gives back to her, or that she gives back to him.
David, what about you? What about the werewolf scene did you enjoy?
Again, I just really loved how it blew open the door on like, oh, this is going straight up paranormal. Like, it wasn't just people being murdered. It was bringing in everything. And I liked that one guy, the principal, finally got what was coming to him, basically. It was a good, almost like a Twilight Zone-esque, you know, getting your justice kind of thing. So I enjoyed that. It was really good. And like Grayson mentioned, it came out of nowhere. I did not expect that to be like the twist of what it was going into. I thought it was the typical like, oh, this girl still likes the more like childish, younger aspects of Halloween. Her friends are moving on, talking about like dates and boys and everything. And then bam, they're all werewolves. So it was good. Definitely kept you guessing.
Right. Well, and it definitely, there's that quote where she's like, Mom said she was the runt of the litter. And you're like, oh, that's a weird thing to say. And then once they become werewolves, you're like, oh, it makes a lot more sense, actually. But yeah, I mean, it you know, the principal character, I didn't even realize he was the vampire until they like, I thought it was like a real vampire because it just showed the girl like dead after he was there or whatever. And then I was like, so they removed his mask because we see the body dressed up in the Red Riding Hood costume fall down, and you think it's her, and you're like, oh, she's dead. And then they're not like scared at all. They're like, oh, it took you long enough. They take off the mask, and you're like, oh, it's that guy. Like, yeah. And then, you know, wearing human skin as their costume was just, it was unique because, you know, they just take it off like it's clothing, and it's a different way, you know. The more new ideas, especially for something as old as werewolf lore, is always interesting, and you gotta take a shot in the dark.
Isn't there a couple of these out now? Like they've done at least one sequel, right?
No,
they keep trying to work on one. The director and writer of this one has been like trying to find the right time. I think he's released a couple of like shorts, but he's definitely been heavily involved in the comic books. But there's been no like major continuation of Trick or Treat yet. But there's like continuously rumors of like one's coming out this year. Okay, no, not this year, but next year, kind of stuff.
I mean, it just seems like such an easy format to, you know, get going. Like,
right?
This could be like Saw, where they had one every October come out. You could easily string together 4 or 5 scary stories, and I don't know. It's weird to me there hasn't been more. Especially since, again, Sam is like he's basically the mascot for Spirit Halloween at this point.
Right. And I mean, honestly, I'm pretty sure like at this point, everybody that was involved, at least in the early developments, pretty happy with the royalties at this point because they're making money every single year and it ain't going to stop.
And I'm sure the budget wasn't like super high on this.
Yeah, no, it was
never is.
It was like big enough to be like, oh, really?
It was 12 million.
Yeah. Still not buku bucks.
Half of The Crow 2024.
Well, that movie scared us in different ways.
That one scarred us in very different ways. Yeah, I was kind of just reading up here on some stuff, and it looks like they've been working on screenplays up until the writer's strike. They've written several different screenplays, but he doesn't want it to become a thing where it ends up like Trick or Treat 9, he goes to space. Sam goes to space is what he said. So I think it's just trying to find the right story is what they're doing.
To be fair, I'd watch the hell out of that movie.
True.
I mean, what were your thoughts on Jason? Was it Jason X when they were in space?
It was awful, but it was funny. Just that they were like, and playing off the whole like nobody can hear you scream in space, and like brilliant, but so bad.
Yeah. Especially because the one before it, they teased the whole Freddy versus Jason thing, and then they didn't really pay it. I mean, they ended up paying it off, but you're just like, man, let's see. I was trying to see what other.
Well, just kind of how at the end of that they teased what Pinhead, I think, at the end, like coming into it, and that still hasn't happened.
Well, didn't they tease somewhere? They teased like wasn't the Evil Dead was part of it?
It was probably
Because
in the
there was
scene
that.
with the old man when he was like flipping through the channels. Because I forgot to mention this, because like that was my biggest thing for this movie was that he was flipping through the channels and Zombie Island, Scooby-Doo Zombie Island was on there, and I think Evil Dead was too. Like there was movie references in those channels that were actually pretty funny.
You know, this is the third straight week now that you've mentioned Scooby-Doo Zombie Island. It almost depresses me that we don't have a secret fourth week coming out about Zombie Island.
Hey, we are gonna do a whole Scooby-Doo Zombie Island deep dive at some point. I haven't decided if we do one for Halloween or if we just do a month and look at that. What was it, like a decade where they did all those like real villain Scooby-Doo movies? Because those were. I remember those as a kid were interesting because you always taught that the monsters were fake, obviously. And then Zombie Island, it's like, no, they're real. And you're like, whoa. Like, it just felt so I don't know why. Just for the time it was groundbreaking. Let's see. So, director of Godzilla King of Monsters. I did not know that. Did Krampus, Trick or Treat. Those were his director credits. For writer X2, Urban Legends Bloody Mary, Superman Returns, Trick or Treat, Krampus. I guess Story for Apocalypse, Godzilla King of the Monsters, Story for Godzilla vs. Kong, and listed as additional for Godzilla X Kong. And then producer for Krampus and executive producer for Trick or Treat. That's the filmography.
I could see him being behind Krampus because that is kind of the same thing as Trick or Treat, where it's like the old legends brought in a scary way to like the present and stuff. It's kind of a horror tale for Christmas.
Hey, there's a month coming up that it would just fit perfectly for. We could talk about that.
March?
I was thinking November, but you know.
July it is.
Yeah, it's the perfect 4th of July movie. You know, nothing goes better than fireworks and Krampus. I mean, that's what me and Sam did in Roswell. We broke the TV.
That's the best tagline right there.
Why do you think they call it Christmas in July?
Yeah, it's not about the great deals you might find. It's about watching Krampus. It's the real spirit of July. All right, so also this one, I guess, like Halloween Town, where you see a lot of the different tropes or characters you come to see. This one as well, you see them just maybe a little bit more adult versions, I suppose. You get like that classic kind of like serial killer, you know, maybe a psycho-esque. And there's like the red herring there, I guess, where you think maybe he stabbed his son. But he just stabbed that one kid's head, and the son is like learning, and he's gonna just become. And it's kind of weird. Like we're talking about sequel, it feels like the son could be in the sequel. I don't know. Grayson, if you could change anything about this movie, what would it be?
Honestly, if I was going to change anything about the movie, it'd probably be the flow of the stories. I mean, for the most part, for the complexity and what they cover, it is pretty seamless, but I think there is a little bit of, clunky transitions. Some of the stories that end kind of just feels like it's more of a finality to where the movie could end too, but I feel like there needs to be more of like, it would just be like timing and pacing, but it's just a minor gripe. I don't think it really matters that much to the movie overall.
David, what about you?
I'm on the same boat there. I do see that it seems like they had 4 or 5 really well written scripts that were about half done, and they were like, "What if we put them all together?" And it worked out, but it could have been a little smoother. And I kind of wish, as much as we loved the werewolf one, I kind of wish all of them would have gone a little more paranormal if that's the angle they were going to take. Just to suddenly have it in there was a little like, oh, okay. If that universe, if things like that existed there, I would have loved maybe each story. Like one is like a hardcore ghost story, one is werewolves, one is vampires, something like that to kind of integrate those other elements more into this. Because up until then, it just kind of felt like a almost slasher type thing where it's like, yeah, it's bloody, but it's people doing it. It's the evil of man, which could have been like one story, but then lead it into more of that paranormal element. If you're going to play in that playground, you might as well, live it up, as opposed to we're going to have this one element and then pull back. Because besides Sam, the werewolves were really the only kind of big paranormal-ish thing in there. So I would have liked more of that element if that was rules of this universe that were established, instead of feeling like it was brought up halfway through and then just kind of left dangling.
Yeah, one thing to add on top of that too, like with what Sam just said, or David just said, with that, I honestly think like they could have. Nowadays, after stuff like VHS and other horror anthology series have become like really big, if they were to do like subject matters of like even like the what's already become a trope at this point anyway, but doing stuff like Trick or Treat and then like 1950s or 85 or something like that, where they make the central theme of the overall movie be about slashers to pay tribute to the slasher movies, and then do you like go back and do like modern day horror stories, but like set it in like the 50s of like the Swamp Thing or the Wolfman or Dracula. Actually have something that is akin to still paying tribute to those things but bringing them up to date. But I think like he was trying to go more for like this could happen in anybody's neighborhood type deal. But yeah, I agree with David that they should have had at least something more,
something tying it all together.
Yeah, exactly. Something tying it all together. But then if they're going to dip their toe in the paranormal, besides giving us just zombie kids and werewolves, I would rather see, a lot more of the bizarrities that are quote unquote behind the scenes, or just not where we're looking, because I think that'd be a lot more cool to do.
Yeah, see, I was wondering, were they zombies or were they ghosts?
They never really told you.
Yeah, I'm assuming zombies because like they were physical bodied and they came out of the bus, but I have no idea.
And also, if they're getting into traditions like they did, I feel like witches would have been a really easy one to pull in.
100%.
As much as they're into like ritual and everything, like easily, or even something like Satanist summoning a demon or something. Like, there's places they could have gone and stayed true if they were trying to do the whole traditions thing.
An Ouija board somewhere.
I mean, honestly, a lot of the comic books delve into that, but I'd rather see the movie make something out of it than have to go into the comics to see that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, something we kind of recently touched upon. We should be able to kind of get some of the stuff in film rather than having to go to other places to learn the lore. Something where Jurassic Park or the Jurassic World sequels fall short is they explained a lot of it on like websites or like all these like hidden things that the layman's not going to go do,
Yeah, like I love expanded universes and having other sources, but in my opinion, as somebody who enjoys and makes film myself, if you can't get your complete story across in your movie, it's a bad movie. If you have to have seen other things to still enjoy it, it's not good.
Well, yeah, it almost feels like you're putting a Band-Aid on some of the issues in your film. Like,
yeah.
Oh, no, but we explained it. But you
but
go
if
to the
you
secret
read these
website.
4 comics that we put out,
Yeah.
and then if you played the alternate reality game over on this web, yeah, like, no.
But that's how Palpatine returned.
Somehow.
In a Fortnite game.
All right. To also stay on subject, I agree with that. We should not have to go back and read articles in People magazines about People magazine to get an interview that describes more detail of the movie in order to get a better understanding of what you're trying to convey. Either you convey it in your movie or you don't. There's not an in-between. It's a visual medium, not a homework medium.
Like, I think the best example of using other sources as like enhancing your movie is something like Deadpool Wolverine, where they had Channing Tatum come in. People who had been following movies for a long time knew that he wanted that Gambit movie made and how close it got to being made and the years and everything. And then to see him actually doing it, it was like, oh man, it's finally like on the screen. But you didn't have to know any of that to enjoy the character coming in. So I think outside things should enhance, but they shouldn't be mandatory.
Well, I mean, to your point, David, I think honestly this movie does that quite well. If you know the idea of Halloween, you know the idea of the monsters, you can enjoy the movie without having to understand a whole bunch of other stuff. It pulls that all together, not in the best way possible that it could for the time and the budget that it had.
Yeah, you could watch this movie and never pick up another piece of anything about it and still be like, it was a decent movie. Yeah. So I agree. It was not mandatory to enjoy it.
Yeah, like I didn't read any of the comics, so I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but I enjoyed what we watched, and now when I see this character everywhere, I'm like, oh, I know more about, and so yeah, I think it's a pretty good film that has its issues, right, but it sticks together pretty well. Sam?
Because I didn't know of any of the lore that was in there. I don't know. Yeah, not knowing the lore, I wouldn't change much about it. Since I think that's what we were talking about before we got off topic a little bit. But no, I thought it was really good.
Well, here's another kind of talking point. So the one girl that they were trying to scare, did she just kind of luck into like them all dying, or was that like her plan the whole time?
I don't know.
Well, if you watch the movie, the kids don't show up until, the ringleader girl blows out stomps out the last jack-o'-lantern, and then all the kids show up. So I think it was just happenstance they all died like the way they did.
Okay. I wasn't sure because there's that point too where she looks at Sam and they look at each other and they just walk. And I was like, is she like part of it? And then of course I thought the house was her house that she came out of, or it was
the same
Cox's
house.
Character, yeah.
And I was just like, she was a part of it.
And I was like, oh, this makes sense now. But like you said, it's a different one. David, what were your thoughts on that? Like, was she in on it or just happenstance?
I lean towards happenstance, but I think they might have deliberately been vague about it so that people would have this exact conversation. And that if there was a sequel, they could potentially go whichever way they wanted with that to, bring that back in, or it could just be like, things just happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's good movies always leave you talking. I think that's the thing, is you want your movie to be, it's word of mouth. Like we've seen movies do really well because, maybe at first they don't do good in theaters, but word of mouth goes around and more people want to go see it. And I think maybe this one, it hasn't reached that status. It's still probably more of a cult classic type of movie. But I think at some point it might reach more of a mainstream level. We've seen some cult movies kind of go over that hump. Greyson, what were your thoughts with like sound design and cinematography and score and stuff like that?
Honestly, I thought it was shot really well. The atmosphere of the movie, because I believe they filmed this in Ohio too, just to kind of catch more of the atmosphere of like where they were trying to shoot. But yeah, the lighting, the acting, everything was like, it was definitely, you could tell the care and the effort that was put into it. It was pretty, I don't know, you could feel the late 2000s aesthetic coming through on the movie, at least just with some of the shot composition and the acting.
And song choices.
And the dialogue. But yeah, it was, for the most part, I thought it was pretty good. It was all well done. Composition was good. Costume design and practical effects, also fantastic. Huge sucker for that kind of stuff. So yeah, I liked it a lot.
Sam, what about you?
I mean, I thought it was good. It wasn't bad. Like I said, it kind of threw me for a loop at a couple parts, but overall, it was definitely good.
They did a really good job, like Grayson mentioned of them. I would definitely believe they actually filmed it in Ohio. Been there a couple times, a very similar look. I think they did a good job of capturing that small town feel that can make you think that this could be any town in America that this happened in. So if that's what they were going for, 10 out of 10, they nailed those vibes. They got the good kind of spooky feel without being overtly like scary. So even the daytime scenes and stuff, it was like got that little spook through it. So that was nice. Music choices were on point, didn't overpower, led you where it needed to in terms of, when to be scared, such like that. Very well put together, especially for a movie with pretty small budget compared to most big time movies these days. They did a great job cinematography wise. I enjoyed the score, and I know you said they keep talking about it. I would be interested to see where they go with a Trick or Treat 2 and how they choose to. I'm sure it'd be another anthology, which would be great. I'd be interested to see if they tie anything back to this one, or if it's just maybe Sam throughout it again and how that happens. But from a strictly filmmaking point of view, they did a great job.
Yeah, see, for me, while we're on the sequel, an interesting thing for me, maybe not do a Trick or Treat 2, but do an anthology about like maybe the Christmas mythologies and some of those like different creatures or
creatures. We can't do that. We already have the greatest anthology movie of all time is a Christmas movie. Do you know what it is? It's called Love Actually. And it is an amazing movie. I don't care what any of you say. Y'all, if you've seen it, you understand. It is absolutely brilliant. One of the best romantic comedies of all time. One of the best Christmas movies. They basically started the whole genre of a holiday movie with interlinking stories that all come together. I mean, it is a brilliant movie. We've got to do that around Christmas time.
All right. So for anyone wondering, when we do a like Christmas theme Christmas season themed one, you now know one of our films we will be covering, and we'll try to do 4 that time.
Gotta do it.
Because I have another one in mind. It only is happenstance to be at Christmas. It's a terrible movie, but I just want to talk about it.
Don't you talk that way about Die Hard?
Is it worse than the other movies you make us watch? The Crow, Joker, Venom. It's pretty par for the course.
I mean,
those all have something in common.
Honestly,
books.
these three movies are probably the best that we've watched and like talked about.
There's definitely an argument because
at least as of recently.
Yeah, the first one we didn't talk about movie. We just talked to RDJ coming in. So
right, the first one it was talking about Secret Wars and stuff.
Yeah.
So that was fine, but most deep dives. And I know one's coming up, so I'm not going to spoil about it, but that one was rough.
And we know what comic book movie is getting released in December, so it might not get better till January, which is Wolfman, which me and Grayson stumbled upon some snippets of Wolfman. It might not get better till February, till we can just pick a random movie.
Bald, bug-tooth homeless man. That's great. Yeah, it's going to be so much fun.
Have you seen the Wolfman design?
No, is it bad?
Yeah, we're hoping it's just before he transforms. It just looks like your average, like, homeless person.
Like that thing you found outside when you were looking for Bigfoot?
We didn't find any homeless people. We did find some kids smoking some ganja, but...
They were trying to find Bigfoot in their own way.
Yeah. Oh, I can't wait. I mean, I guess it's out now, but I can't wait for people to see it because I am just, like, so just being sarcastical. In that, like, I told Sam, I'm like, no Bigfoot people will ever allow me anywhere near a convention once they see this video of me.
Just because that's how I feel when I go ghost hunting. So
yeah. I also have been reading the BuzzFeed Unsolved Shane and Ryan's book, so that might have been coming through a little bit. I will say they were not. They said the Sally House sucked in their book.
Oh yeah, they said that on the they've gone twice.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, that was in their very first episode, and then it was the last episode that they closed BuzzFeed Unsolved with.
Oh, so it came full
before they went into Watcher to do their own thing.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, man, they like usually like Ryan has something nice to say or scared, and he was like, no, I don't like this house. I was like, huh. Next page.
Yeah. He's terrified of that house. He doesn't want to go back.
Yeah. All right. Now that we went off topic. All right. So Greyson.
Are you having a stroke?
No,
You're muted.
my dog, and I hear voices outside. My dogs are freaking out. All right.
Kansas
So
Kite Monster.
yeah, the KKM is here. It's come. That's why Brennan's not here. He's actually controlling it. I'm gonna have to go outside and see what's going on. All right. So before I get brutally mauled by the Kansas Kite Monster, Greyson, final thoughts, rating, recommendation for this movie. And after you, if I'm not back, just go to David.
Okay. Well, gonna drop a couple truth bombs on the group and the audience. Even though I do love this movie a lot, it is probably one of my favorites of at least autumn. And this time of year, growing up, I never went to trick or treating or celebrated Halloween. So even though I never did that, I really did like this movie just because makes you feel like it's autumn, makes you feel like it gives you that little bit of nostalgic feeling for like some of the traditions and some of the stuff that's going on, while also giving you a horror movie and paying tribute to multiple classic like horror tropes throughout the entire thing, while also like addressing stuff like checking your candy and not talking to strangers on Halloween. But yeah, despite me never really growing up with Halloween, I still really like this movie quite a bit.
What was your rating?
Oh crap, my rating. Thank you for that. I always say I'm going to give it a solid 8.5.
I'll agree. I like the feel of it. It had very nice vibes. I do like seeing some of the this is a tradition going back to wherever. That's why we honor it and stuff like that. The thought of Halloween having this rich history, which it does. Very cool. I do think again that the punishments were a little overboard for some of the traditions not held, or that somebody killing you could be stopped by giving them a chocolate bar. That was interesting. I think it's a solid movie, not one of my favorites, but it's still not bad. I'd give it a 7.
Sam?
No, I enjoyed this one. It was very interesting, threw me through for a couple loops. So I would probably give it 8.5.
Well, hey, in the spirit of going 50-50, I'm going to give it a 7 as well. No, I mean, I'd give it a 7. For me, I'm not the biggest fan of like slasher movies and stuff like that. So I actually enjoyed this one. I think a lot of it was the lore and just having that unique feel to it, and some just unexpected turns, and you always kind of wondered what was going to happen. And so it was fun. It felt like Halloween. Obviously, it took place on a trick or treat, and like we've said multiple times, it's shot in a way that you feel like it could happen anywhere. So it gives that spooky feel, and I think it's perfect for this time of year. For anyone, I know we do boutique Blu-rays on the channel. Sam even got 2 recently, Tammy the T-Rex and Underworld. But the boutique version is coming out in time for Halloween, so make sure to go pick that up, because Arrow always does a really fantastic job of just bringing up these films, and it's unique to see them do more of a more modern one. I guess they've been doing Tremors and stuff like that. But yeah, up until next time, maybe we'll be back for Thanksgiving season. I don't know what we do for those, but we'll see. If you guys want, tell us in the comments below. We'll be back for December for sure. But David, do you have any super special Halloween release on Abnormal Voyages?
Yeah, so this whole month we've been releasing stuff. We got a brand new ghost investigation that just came out, as well as our Halloween special recently, where we went to the Castle Halloween and met the Queen of Halloween and everything. So that's up on our channel right now. Go check it out.
Awesome. All good stuff there. Greyson, where can people find you if they want to see some drawings and stuff like that?
Just as always, the _ Grayman is my Instagram, and that's pretty much all I got. So
Yeah, and Sam will be back. We're working on some more videos. We're almost done with one. We've been filming two, I guess, in unison because of the subject matter, but the information's not really out there, so we're excited to share it with you. For more like pop culture stuff, we will be back talking Venom: The Last Stand on 11/11. So hopefully we're in as good spirits as we were today, or maybe we'll need to, sneak extra alcohol in just to get through the movie. I don't know. We'll find out in a couple weeks. But yeah, if you guys want more from us here at Culz Paranormal Studios, there's a link to the right. For more Culz Reviews Deep Dives, there's a link to the left. And the bottom left will have more of the Halloween season material. And don't forget to hit that like, give us a subscribe, and let us know for Halloween season, what is your favorite film to watch? Tell us in those comments below.